Right, okay, is you ready? Because I am ready, baby. And as I said, this is the last in the 3-part series of these cognitive biases. So if you want to know the rest of the 9 reasons why you think the way that you think, why your mind is the way that it is, grab that piece of pen and paper, baby. So let's get into it. And bias number 17, baby. Bias number 17 is known as stress influence tendency or bias. So essentially what this bias says is we tend to act faster and more extreme when we got that adrenaline rushing through our veins. But on the other side of this is, it says that a certain amount of stress is good, but too much stress on the other hand is detrimental. And I'm sure you have all of you have been there at some point. Let's say you have a paper due maybe the following day or 2 days later, and it's just a decent amount of stress is going through you, but you still have a decent amount of time in order to complete that paper. But on the other hand, let's say you have like 3-4 projects due the following day or 2 days later. Usually you would be so stressed, and with this stress and adrenaline rushing through you with the multiple projects that you have due the following day or the day after that, you are more likely not to do anything just because the stress is too much for you to handle. After stress influence tendency, we have availability misweighing bias or tendency. And this bias essentially says we overweigh what is easily available to us. And the way our minds work, the way our brains work, we tend to place more weight on what is more easily available to us as opposed to something that is more difficult to reach or to get. And let me give you the perfect example of let's say me. I got a sweet tooth. Don't at me, I'm working on it, cutting down on my sugar intake, but I have a sweet spot for cookie dough ice cream. If you were to give me 2 choices, take this cookie dough ice cream right now or wait for a healthier alternative in a little bit, I will. Healthy food for what? Best believe I'm taking that cookie dough ice cream. And this is the same case for a majority of people. Just that thing that is more easily available to us, we are much more likely to gravitate towards. And bias number 19 is known as use it or lose it tendency or bias. And this essentially says you will lose what you don't use. It's as simple as that. So let me give you my example, right? So after I graduated college back in 2018, I was a little bit of a hermit, going from someone that was constantly socializing into like hermit mode, and mostly because I was looking to secure that bag, so I had my priorities in check, but I was not socializing as much as I would have liked during that period. So I came out of that a few times in social situations, and it was like I was tensed up, just due to the fact of not being social for so long. And this is essentially use it or lose it. Albeit there are more extreme scenarios where it's much harder to redevelop that skill. But in my case, it wasn't that long that I was away from the communication and socializing setting. So it just took some time to, reactivate that muscle memory. Then we have drug misinfluence tendency or bias. And this says that we're prone to get addicted to los drogas. Things like alcohol, cocaine, caffeine, and all these mind-altering substances. And for the most part, it's usually people looking for a crutch to escape reality. So they take these drugs in order to receive all these dopamine, serotonin hits, all these good neurotransmitter chemicals going on in the mind. And then we have senescence misinfluence tendency or bias. So this bias says that as we grow older, we tend to lose certain skills and abilities, and we're generally just not as strong or mentally sharp as we used to be. And something you could do to help counteract this is just continuous learning and studying. This essentially helps promote neuroplasticity, which is the formation of new brain cells and new neural pathways in the mind. And bias number 22 is known as authority misinfluence tendency or bias. So this bias says that essentially we tend to listen to authority figures in certain situations just because we say so. So let me give you the example of the Milgram experiment. I'll put it in somewhere here. So essentially there were test subjects, right? And these test subjects, they gave electrical shocks to a person just because the authority figure in the room said so. And this essentially showed us that people are willing to cause harm to others just to follow this authority misinfluence tendency or bias. Next we have twaddle tendency, and this is just spending too much time on nonsense. Your Facebooks, your Netflix, your Hulus, whatever that it is. Just don't do it. Come on, be productive, yo. Be productive. And then, excuse me. This bias is, I just find this bias hilarious. This bias is known as reason respecting tendency, and it essentially says that us as humans, we tend to just want the answers and not reasons for a better understanding. And there was a study where a person jumps in front of the line just because they say the word because. So let me give you the example. So like let's say I'm there waiting in a subway, and I go to the person in front of me, excuse me, can I cut in front of you in line because my bus leaves in 5 minutes? Or can I cut in front of you because I think I'm a better person than you? And more often than not, the answer to these questions were of course. And last but definitely not least, is known as a Lollapalooza tendency or bias. So essentially what this bias says is when there are multiple biases at play, this can help sway people in certain directions, and more often than not, extreme, very extreme outcomes. So an example of this would be at an auction. A lot of rich and famous people and smart people actually avoid auctions just because there are multiple biases at play. Like for example, reason respecting bias for the most part is there, availability misweighing bias is there as well, reward punishment bias, liking loving bias, authority wait, did I say that one? Authority, you get me. So it's just essentially all these biases coming together to help sway you when you don't really think properly when you're under the influence of the Lollapalooza tendency or bias. And with that is all, everyone. You know, this was a great series. I'm a very big fan of psychology and understanding the inner workings of the human mind. Like I was not always the way that I am right now, and it is thank God to psychology, studying my own mind to help reprogram my own mind. So I hope I can help you in reprogramming your mind so that you can live your best life, baby. And as always, if you got any value, that like button, you know, comment, let me know your thoughts. What do you think the craziest bias is? What do you think the one you are more susceptible to is? In the overall comments, you know, you get me. So as always, thank you for watching, and till next time.